Hey HDC, welcome to Daily Devos. I'm Pastor Jody. Today we are in Philippians chapter 1, verses 14 through 17. The Apostle Paul here writing to the church at Philippi. And here's what he says in verse 14. It says, "And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. It is true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I am in chains." And there's a couple things here in these couple verses that really jump out to me that hopefully are a challenge and an encouragement to us all. And the first, I think, is that people are watching Paul suffer for the gospel. He's imprisoned here, and they're encouraged by that. They're emboldened with his suffering to take the gospel and to be more intentional with it. And I think for us, sometimes we forget that even in the worst of times, God uses often those circumstances and those situations, how we respond in those situations as we begin to take the gospel into those people he's placed in our oikos. And sometimes that's the suffering that we face personally, and people and see how we respond to that and then are encouraged from that. And that was the case of the Apostle Paul. They're watching him suffer. They're watching him being imprisoned for his faith. And they're seeing how he responds. They're seeing how he reacts. And because of that, then, they are emboldened to take the gospel and share it further. You and I have people in our lives, some believers, some not, and they're watching how we live. They're watching how we respond to life. They're watching how we respond to the things that life brings. When life seems to throw its worst at us, are we remembering that when things are at their worst, Christ has offered his very best? Do we often drift into the same patterns that those who don't know Christ do? Are we finding ourselves complaining? Or are we finding ourselves leaning in and trusting more? Are we encouraging and grieving and mourning, maybe even, as those with hope or those without hope? And so we see, I think the first thing here that I would like us to see is that, God uses sometimes really horrible circumstances for the advancing of the gospel and for our good and the greater expanding of the kingdom of God. Whether that's through people in your oikos, whether that's through people watching other believers who are in your life, seeing how you respond and how you live out, and then are encouraged in their own faith. The other thing I think we see is that Paul here is reminding us that really the mission still stands. And I think it's interesting that he points out, some people are proclaiming Christ and not even doing it out of the right motive, but they're still proclaiming Christ. Some people are doing it from the right motive, but they're still proclaiming Christ. And so be encouraged today, church, that God is using whatever circumstances we're in for his good and for the expanding and the advancing of the gospel and the kingdom of God. That people are watching your life and mine and how we respond. That how we respond and react to circumstances can be an encouragement to others to take the gospel further. And don't miss this. God places such a high priority on us taking the gospel to those around us. So today, be mindful in the circumstances you find yourself in. Be aware of how you respond and react when things don't go maybe the way you thought. If you find yourself in a situation where you feel like maybe it's a season of suffering and mourning and grieving or sadness, how do you respond to that? And be looking for opportunities to share the gospel and take it to those that he places in your life. Hey, we love you. Be encouraged today. Philippians is a great study. We're going to have a great time in these devotes.